This is Siskoid of Siskoid's Blog of Geekery, and you're listening to Comics Recollected for August 1983. It's a walk down memory lane to the comics racks of my youth to see my earliest experiences in buying, reading, and collecting American comic books. August 1983 it's a strange month. I only bought 6 comics, but that's because I basically blew my allowance on both July's comics and the comics for August when I came back from Texas, which was a shared custody arrangement my parents had. So here I was back in Canada, back to my usual comic racks, and I only had so much money to spend on getting all the comics I missed and the ones that just come out. We'll start with Fury of Firestorm number 18. After introducing Firehawk in the previous issue, this one introduces Tokamak. A tokamak is a nuclear reactor. It's a Russian nuclear reactor. As far as I know, they never created a character called Can-Do. But the tokamak, yes, and it's basically the same villain that's been around for all of this arc, but now he's been given cool armor, or, well, I say cool, but really fat armor, and he fights Firestorm for the first time in this comic, and at the end, he shrinks Firestorm down to, well, let's call it nuclear size, to atomic size. But we wouldn't have long to wait to see the outcome of that, as you'll see. Still trying to get into the Avengers at this point, because I am a fan of team books. I kind of remember the issue, or at least I remember Moonstone and Blackout, maybe Rhino in this, but I didn't even remember Electro being there. So, again, I will get into the Avengers at some point. This is not that point. Now, if you've been following along, you'll know that while I was in the States during the summer, I bought X-Men number 153, Kitty's Fairy Tale, and fell in love with it. Now, that comic was bagged up with another comic found at a Walmart. It was already a couple of years old. And when I got back to Canada, straight to the pharmacy, found X-Men 175, grabbed it, 20th anniversary issue, double-sized. I was an X-Men fan from 153, but by 175, things had really moved on. It was still a great comic, of course. But unlike Kitty's Fairy Tale, which was a standalone, not very much connected to continuity, this did have some of that notorious X-Men continuity in it. It had the wedding of Cyclops and Madeline Pryor, who was a sort of carbon copy of Jean Grey, a mysterious carbon copy of Jean Grey. Storm was in here looking all punk with a mohawk, so something had changed there. Rogue was in the team, and from her thought bubbles it seemed that hadn't been for long, because she was still wondering if she'd made a good move, if she could fit in. And there was Lockheed in here, the tiny dragon on Kitty Pryde's shoulder, who was in the fairy tale, but he was a fantasy. It was imaginary. Basically, a giant dragon that stood for the plane, the X-Men aircraft. And here he was, somehow real and tiny, and basically a super pet. So I don't even, I don't even know how that happened or what the connection was, but here he is. So obviously things are a lot more complicated in this issue than they were in the fairy tale, which was a kind of solo book. Still, great story. Even Cyclops was cool in this, I'd like to say, and a beautiful Dark Phoenix appearing, an illusion still, but beautiful Dark Phoenix by Paul Smith with inks by John Romita Jr., who would wind up penciling the series soon. I think Paul Smith had trouble with deadline. I don't know, but still, this is one of my favorite X-Men issues, and I think a lot of the first ones were. Oh, just a tiny correction. I didn't mean to say that John Romita Jr. was inker on this. It's Bob Wyasek who's the inker, but John Romita Jr. did some pages, so he's co-penciler. And we're back to Fury of Firestorm with Annual number 1, another double-sized comic. I guess that's where all my money went that month, the double-sized issues. And this continues and ends what I call the Nuclear Men arc. So it has the big showdown between the forces of good, Firestorm and Firehawk, and those of evil, Tokamak and Enforcer. And I mean, it's got all sorts of cool action. I remember Firestorm gets shrunk down to atomic size and has to basically blow himself up to get big again, creating a nuclear explosion at the heart of Washington, D.C. All sorts of cool stuff. It's unfortunate that Tokamak gets kind of pwned, because I would have loved to see him become a recurring character in Firestorm's Rogues Gallery, for sure, for sure. Notable historically for being the introduction, that's what it says in the credits, the introduction of Raphael Kayanan, who would go on to become a major Firestorm artist on the main series, replacing Pat Broderick eventually. I never liked Kayanan's artwork as much as Broderick's, but here, maybe inked by Rodin Rodriguez or whatever it is, it's pretty close. It's very nice, moody, exciting. So a very strong finish, and it's kind of sad to me because the best Firestorm storyline I ever read was that first one, and it never quite matched up to that after that. There have been a lot of good storylines and a lot of good writers on it, but Carrie Bates' best story is this one, and it's kind of, I don't know, I'm kind of disappointed that it never reached those heights again. So I'm still reading New Adventures of Superboy. This is number 47, but I'm not reading it for the main feature. You've got the finale of the Sunburst arc, but, you know, and it's fine, but, I mean, it ends with a feat of super hypnotism. So, there you go. No, I'm reading it for the backup, Dial H for Hero, and I don't know why I didn't mention this in the previous video, but number 46 has the first appearance of my two favorite Dial H heroes ever. Chris becomes Trouble Clef, a guy who has a magic horn that creates solid sound, and Vicky becomes Venus the Flying Trap, which is a terrible name, but she looks good, and so does Trouble Clef. They've got nice costumes, and she can create these pink floating force fields, which she calls traps, but have a lot more useful than that. It's kind of like the Invisible Girl or something. And they appeared in 46 and appear again in 47. So they were so cool that they were kept around, and Chris and Vicky didn't redial, which was usually the case. Every issue they would. So I love these characters. We're well drawn by Bender and Hunt, and although there are only two heroes, you can tell we're very close to the end of this story arc, and in fact close to the end of the Chris and Vicky era, close to the end of this whole era of sending in your heroes and villains through the mail for them to appear in DC Comics. We're 2 issues away from the finale. And you can tell because they're really emptying out the files. Only 2 heroes, but lots of villains. 46 had 4, and there are, right there on the splash page, we're introduced to 10 more in this particular comic. Cable Man, Spider with 2 R's, Serpentina, Metallifero, Aurora, Solar Dynamo, Darkstar, Trojan, Titanus, Blue Damselflies. They're not all classics, but you know, they're trying to throw out as many of these characters as they can before the very end, so that as many readers and submitters can see their characters in print. So that's pretty cool. And we end with World's Finest Comics number 297, Superman and Batman still tangling with the Pantheon. It's a saga that'll last until number 300, and I don't have very many memories from this. Remember Superman and Batman maybe climbing a giant tree? Was it in Africa? I don't remember. And the reason I don't have very many memories of this is because I soon after exchanged this whole story arc for older comics with a classmate. That was August of '83. Soon you'll be able to follow me to September. In the meantime, siskoid.blogspot.com for all your geekery needs. Under this video you'll also find links to specific posts about these very comics, or some of these, and pictures from the comics as well. I've been known to write quite a few words, so bring your reading glasses, and I'll see you next time.